to be done, but we've really been working on all things COVID for the past several months. Like as they did say earlier, our goal is, I think we're unified, both the old board and the new board, in the sense that we all want students back in the classroom. We know that our students need to be in the classroom, and that's where students excel. And so we really also recognize, though, that there are the safety issues. Our schools are ready for our students to return when it is safe for them to return. And we are, I know that the committee will be presenting out in the next few weeks at our board meeting, really what the plans for getting students back in the community are, or back in the school are. My challenge to the community is that this needs to be our priority. And so everything you do, you need to think, is this helping me get my students back in school, or is this hindering me getting my students back in school? We need to really mask up and social distance and do the things we need to do to get our kids back in the classroom. And that needs to be our top priority. As Mr. Thompson did say, we do have a handful of students. The number is less than 50, I believe, that are receiving services. And as part of their IEPs, this is a requirement for them. I also believe there's a few, handful of students who are CTE students that, for whatever certification or qualification they're working on, they have to physically do something inside the CTE or their tech schools. And so a handful of those are coming in as well. The board really would like to see, if targeted services, we got up to 3,000 students into the schools before we had to cut back down. The board is really wanting to get that number, get at least the targeted services students in as often and as possible. And so we're watching what happens in the next few weeks to see if those students can come back in. And targeted services, what the board is focused on is, again, the students with IEPs and 504s, but a little more expansion of that. Our ELL students, our disengaged students. We're not really looking at bringing in like a whole kindergarten or a whole ninth grade, but if we have students that need to be in here because they're not getting something that they need to be, we want them in here. The other big thing, as you all know, we met yesterday, and the superintendent is on medical leave. And we are optimistic that he will be back soon. His medical leave is through January 31st, or until his doctor clears him to return. In the interim, we have appointed Dr. Helm as the acting superintendent. And I did not make her come here tonight. She jumped right in and has done a lot of work yesterday and today. But I told her that we had this tonight, but hopefully, it's one of those, like, I hope she's at a future meeting, but I hope she's not. So, but if you need anything, she is definitely familiar with this district. She has served as the interim superintendent and the acting superintendent on several occasions, and she still has been employed with the district as a substitute administrator. So she's basically our substitute superintendent for a few moments. And so we wish Dr. Clark well, and we hope that he returns soon. And he has really stated that the one thing is, he does not want people worrying about him or thinking about him. The way that you can honor him is to continue the work that he has done in the district, and continue to recognize our equity. Focus on equity is a big thing for him. He's excited about, I don't know if you all heard at our last board meeting, we are moving forward with expanding Carter G. Woodson and having a K-5 prep, boys prep school. And so that's something that he has really been a champion of and is excited about. I think, that's the best way to honor him at this time, is just to continue with this work and move forward. I know that he wants to get back here as soon as possible. So, if there's any other questions any of you all have for me, don't hesitate to reach out. Don't hesitate to contact me. And I really, again, just want to reiterate that I appreciate all of you serving on this committee and taking your time to be with us this evening.
All right. All right. Thank you. We really appreciate you and your leadership, especially at these trying times. So thanks again. All right. And
so Chair Abdul, up next with the superintendent's report, and I'm not going to certainly try to fill in words for him, but what I do want to do is in March 3rd, we met. And then on March 2nd, actually, there was a legislative update. And I just want to give you all the opportunity to look at what was taking place transition to now in December. So I'm going to share my screen real quick, and you can certainly chime in and talk about anything on this page. And I'll do that as a part of the update to kind of give us a snapshot from how we've evolved since March, particularly as we move into this next legislative session. Let's see here. So the first one's going to be week 9 of the legislative session provided by one of our consultants, Bob Babbage, and his team. And so you all see we were working on a budget update at that time, which was again March the 3rd, March 2nd actually. Looked at party split special election victories. You'll see some of the House seats and stuff of that's taking place, and I'll send this to you all after the meeting's over, just so you can give a snapback. Senate Bill 2 passed the Senate at that time, convicted felons. Senate Bill 58, reaction to the government controversial pardons, passed. Marcy's Law is the second attempt on constitutional change, and you all saw how that legislation changed in November as well. Quick summary of bills on the move. Senate Bill 45, creating standards for child care centers. Senate Bill 21, legislation for veterinarians. Senate Bill 120, HB 129, efforts to reform the local health departments. Senate Bill 182, efforts that passed the Senate last year, anti-doxing bill. Senate Bill 10, dismantling the Kentucky Board of Education, and you saw how that evolved. HB 32, teenage vaping. Senate Bill 163, HB 2. And so in the news at that time, a federal judge rejected injunction against former Board of Education members. House members passed bills raising taxes on vaping, tobacco use, 7 abortion bills, bills introduced to remake the school board. Then on March the 2nd was the last day to file bills. March 15th, NCAA basketball selection Sunday began. And so April 15th was the last day of the session. So I'm gonna snap us real quick over to where we are with today's legislation. And so that's November 30th. The House U.S. Supreme Court responded to Kentucky school decisions. As you can see, 60,000 students attend faith-based schools were set to return to class. You saw that they got, you
Mr.
there?
Thompson, I believe we're still on the maybe it's just me,
Is
but
it not switched?
it hadn't switched yet.
Over now.
Must be technology slow here. Yep. Let me see if I can make that happen real quick. Yeah. It's technology for you. Still hadn't switched?
Not yet.
Not yet.
I think you need to stop sharing your screen and reselect the screen that you want
document.
to share. Mhm.
How about that? Yes or no?
We see you.
Still see me? That's a good thing, man. Well, try one more again. How's that?
There you go.
All right, so this is the current legislative bulletin dated November 30th. And you can see the U.S. Supreme Court response to our local governor and the decision to shut down public gatherings, which included faith-based organizations, and the attempted injunction filed from a Danville-based school, and what that result is. I won't read it in its entirety. federal government ends extended unemployment benefits, as all this as a result of COVID-19. So really, I won't go in deep about this, but I'll send it to you. Wanted to kind of juxtapose where we were then and where we are now during this opportunity to share, since in the absence of the superintendent. And Chair Spires shared a great deal of updates on the district, and that's where we are. And again, attempting to get us back to in-person, and much of that is indicative on the behaviors of adults who typically are the ones out in public eating and dining, which has increased the rates of contractions. And what's really going to be interesting as we get through these next 2 weeks is watch the numbers based on our experience last week with Thanksgiving, knowing that those contraction rates will not appear anywhere from 7 to 10, 14 days later, and see what the data is looking like there as we attempt to get kids back in, as Chair Spires spoke to, on some other measure of normalcy, considering the rates that we were at prior to completely shutting down and going back to in-person. So I'll pause there.
One thing I want to add, just to also make people aware, is the university is taking a long holiday break, and the students are leaving the community. And so that's one of the things we hear a lot about, is how are the students impacting the spread, or how are the students and the university impacting the community. And so the one thing that the health officials and such are predicting is that we might get a little better understanding of how they are impacting the spread, or how they are impactful in our community. Because I think it would be incorrect to say that they're a silo, because we all go to the grocery store where they are working at the checkout, or I have a UK student as my babysitter, so I can sit here in these meetings. There's a couple UK students that live on my street, so they are definitely a part of our community. So it's really hard, though, to understand the argument, and UK has done such a phenomenal job with testing and such that that it's that they're really being proactive, which is also helping, that's giving us great reads, but it's also increasing some numbers and some data. So it'll be interesting over the next few weeks. And I think that's important as we talk about equity, because they are part of our community. And as Mr. Nathaniel said to me just a second ago, they are students who bring their laundry home to mom and dad. And so they are in our homes, and they are any data that we can have to really understand how they impact us will be helpful. So that is one officials will be looking at for the next few weeks as well. So, and that might help us about the who, the what, and the why, how we can return to the classroom. So.
All right. Thank you, Chair Spires. All right, Mr. Thompson, you want to put the agenda back up on the screen? We can see where we are now. Oh, man, I don't know if he hears us.
Joseph, I wanted to like your comment about how they're in the meeting too, but there's not a Facebook like or a social media like on the chat box. So, but thank you for adding that piece as well. I want to make sure that the public got that reflected.
All right. Thanks for putting this back up. So let's move to, let me see, subcommittee reports. And again, I realizing that we haven't really done anything over the last 5 to 6 months. I imagine some of the folks on the committee have still been engaged in some capacity. So I'll just open the floor up really to see if anyone has anything that they would like to share. I would like to get some feedback too, as well from Mr. Thompson. I know he served, actually, he and I both served on the mayor's commission uh, for social equity justice earlier this year, with everything that happened throughout our state and the country. The mayor had a commission for racial justice and equity. And Mr. Thompson served on the Education and Economic Opportunity subcommittee. And then, and there were other subcommittees as well. And the notes were sent out there as health disparities, housing and gentrification, law enforcement, justice and accountability, as well as racial equity. And the racial equity committee was one that I served on. But I am interested to hear from Mr. Thompson as well on feedback specifically around education. And then see also if there was any tie-ins between kind of any recommendations there to what the city has already committed to, and or even has something happened within the state that we need to be made aware of as well.
I was doing all that talking and I was muted. So yes, hopefully you can see the screen. I've shared the report with you all earlier, which included the subcommittees, a large group of a cross section of our community. I was the think single one from the education space over on this side, and again served on education and economic development. But I had a ton of other former educators and community-based advocates who joined into this work. A lot of great work. The reports are on the mayor's website, which I also sent you all a link to that website. But what we did as we spent our time and tried to use our time very wisely was focus on root cause analysis and how did we get here? All the way back to 1619 and 1776 and all the other dates that predates all of us. How did we get here? And look at our system to determine how do we eradicate a design model that actually did not include everybody. And so knowing that, we focused on conversations like the achievement gap and economic disparity. How do you build wealth? How do you build generational wealth, dual generational wealth, not just one generation? How do you go into areas of high concentrated poverty where children live, and we know that where they live matter, put systems and structures in place that allows them equal access and opportunity. And so out of that large conversation, which you all can find in that comprehensive report, we focused on the beginning of the achievement gap. And we determined that that gap did not start when students showed up to school. It occurs K birth to 3, birth to 5 when children are born, and talked about how, what are the variables in our community that's impacting that gap from childbirth to 3. And in our recommendation, focused on high quality early childhood education. How can we grant systems and structures and put those in place to help support families with teaching and learning at home before kids get to school? And so you'll see in the mayor's report, our recommendation number 1 on creating high quality early childhood education. But I'm gonna pair that with the economic opportunities. We talked about families who send their children to their mother's home or their grandmother's home or their aunt's home or to a friend's home while they're having to return to the workplace. And how can we convert some of those high quality childcare places into high quality childcare centers, maybe working with some licensing and certification agencies to help those entrepreneurs become small businesses. And so that's how we paired without shutting down those high quality care, because those are nurturing and comforting environments that have shaped the minds of many of us. And so it's not that they're not useful, but how can we then convert them and make them businesses and viable businesses, thus allowing those children to stay in their communities and get high quality early childhood development. And so that was one of the major, and really the major two components of our recommendation. But we had several ancillary conversations, and one of those was around hiring practices in our school district. How can we increase minority teacher representation that mirrors our student demographics? And then again, looking at the root cause of that. Do we have a disparity issue with hiring in the district? The question became not necessarily, you have to look at school by school, because CARE decentralized hiring. School districts do not hire employees within school buildings. School principals are given the authority back from 1990 to make those hiring decisions. So we, based on our concentrated efforts, thought it would be something that this group could possibly take up as a charge going into next year, to start analyzing the data around what does hiring practices look like school by school, and then allowing this group to come with a recommendation back to the board on what we can do to drive the increase of hirings. Again, we know that's not a simple solution, because the workplace pipeline comes from our source, which is colleges and universities that graduate students. If you don't have students going in, minority students going into the pipeline, you can't get them out. So we looked at multiple factors, which include the praxis test, the ACT test, which you've seen across the country has been waived during this COVID-19 pandemic. But those aren't the only barriers. And so those are things this group can start exploring and looking at how we can better support teacher prep programs that will drive our workforce programs, that will put more teachers into the pipeline, giving our school principals the opportunity to make more hiring selections. And so that's a pretty 30,000 overview, Chair Muhammad, of the work we did over those past couple of months. And I'll pause for any questions.
Okay, thank you. And any questions to that quick presentation by Mr. Thompson?
Abdul. Oh, go ahead, Stephanie.
Oh, I just wanted to highlight, one thing is exciting about this year is that, I don't know if you all saw the Herald Leader article earlier this semester, that we do have more minority principals, and Daryl, you can expand on this slightly if you want, than we have had in the history of the organization, which I think is really a great feat, especially in a minority majority district, that we are moving in that direction. So
that is correct. And that's the interesting thing about the elections, having the results and having impacts. You all know that as we increase those numbers, and that was a result of CARE again. 1990 CARE put in place the KRS 16345, which is our school council law, that dictated there must be minority representation in any school in Kentucky that has 8% or more student demographics. Now, this is something we can talk about going forward as we look at the legislative priorities. Our school board is completely homogeneous now, with the absence of the superintendent. That's, again, a result of elections. And however, if you look at Jefferson County has a board of 7. It's based on some statutory guidelines that determine divisions and what's considered cities called, slipping my words, they're either class 1 cities or class 2 cities based on population, but we're considered a class 2 city. And based on that size, we're only eligible for a 5-district or division board. That predates many years of legislation, so that legislation hadn't changed. But what we found, as I've had conversation with the Public Policy Committee here in Lexington, is that language though changed for SBDM councils, has no demographic language in it that requires school boards to be diverse. It's all subject to the populace and the divisions and the lines. And so those are other things we could start talking about around intentionality to ensure diversity, equity, diversity, inclusion is a part of all that we do, not just within our schools. And so if you all got any questions, I'll certainly will pause to take those. Thank you, Chair Spires, for opening up that dialogue.
Mr. Kamick, you want to say something?
Oh, well, I was just working in the mayor's office. This process started back in June for this commission. And we got the final report in mid-late October. If you didn't get a chance to see it today, you can look back and get it. But the mayor gave an update at the council work session today on the items that have currently been accomplished and the ones that are in the works as far as the whole report. So I encourage you all to kind of look at that to see what's being worked on. But at the same time, I think there were 70 or so overall commission members from the community. So there was a big community input period. And there's opportunities for, I think, this group as the Equity Council to really, I guess, as Daryl stated, focus on that education subcommittee work, because a lot of those items are going to be FCPS oriented. However, I think at the same time, we need to realize that there's always going to be a need to be a partnership with the city as well in helping make some of these things come to fruition. And I feel comfortable speaking on behalf of the mayor's office in that, we're willing to, work with FCPS and see how we can assist and move forward on some of these items. There were, I think, upwards of almost 60 directives that came out of this commission report. So there's a lot to work on, a lot to do, and we expected that, and we look forward to it. I mean, if it needs to be done, we're going to work on it to get it done. So yeah, I think for members of this group to read the report, it's 68 or so pages, I believe, and then I think really hone in on that education piece would be great, because here and in the school board and the school administration are the experts on how we can adapt policies and make changes. And if the city needs to work with you all on doing that, then we will.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Craig. That was what you just talked about, and the update as well, being that you're right there with the mayor and seeing what's going on too. That's very appreciative. The one thing that I definitely, if you haven't had an opportunity to look through it, definitely, as Craig just mentioned, please look through it. There's multiple recommendations under the education tab that were given, and I think it's like 3 of them. Yeah, I see. No, I'm sorry, 5. But number 2 specifically was institute a whole family approach to education and economic family progression. And one thing I'm pretty passionate about is financial literacy, just because I guess because I work at a bank and I see firsthand what's going on in the financial world with consumers, and how we have adults trying to navigate the economic space and not really knowing how to do that from a consumer level and a business level. And you see it highlight even more so with minorities. And so one of my biggest fears has always been that if we as adults don't have that knowledge that we need to be able to act on, how do we then teach our children? And then the cycle continues. So, again, please take a look at that and see if there's something that the council can take up help give some life and continue to push there and make a recommendation even to the board around it. Definitely, I got some ideas around financial literacy. I know it's been brought up before at the state level. I don't know if it's ever gone anywhere, to be honest with you, but I would love to see our district implement some financial literacy for middle schoolers and move forward from there. And, and I was having a conversation with someone even at the college level, and we were talking about how, to me, in my mind, and again, Dr. Jenkins could speak to this better than I could because of where she is in her career at a major university and helping students every day. But in my mind, I mean, financial literacy should be even at that point for our college students. I mean, I have a degree in finance, but I remember being an engineer, and I remember taking, whatever it was, physics 102 or whatever, and I'm thinking, should I have replaced that? Could I have replaced that with financial literacy? Well, I learned it along the way, but for those that will never do that, and then they get out of college and then they have to learn it. Wow. I mean, along with $100,000 in student loan debt. So I'll get off my shoebox there, but again, go and look at that, really dig into it. Interested to hear any other feedback from anybody else tonight that has some opinion or something they want to discuss around that or something else.
And Chair Mohammed, one of the reflections I'll take that really dovetails with your comments is that's why we are taking an intentional effort to look at our student groups and our historically struggling student groups like African American boys and expanding the Carter G. Woodson Academy into a K-5 program. The goal of that is really to get students early access to rigorous courses, math and science, so that they early begin to enjoy math. That's the first part of it, that they learn math well enough, they enjoy it, and they then choose those other courses and pathways before they get to middle school. And by middle school, that by 8th grade, they have already taken algebra, which will then open up tons and tons of opportunities into careers like yours that you just mentioned, but not exclusively to that. But knowing that numbers count and matter, if we can get our folks to understand numbers and literacy, financial literacy sooner, the better we're going to be able to have an impact on that dual generational approach to changing their economic outcomes. So that's intentional. So I wanted to make sure we recognize that that's part of our strategy and approach to addressing some of these historical ills.
So I have a comment. When I think back to several years ago when the district went through redistricting, and I think about the priorities that were listed, my kids are zoned for Rosa Parks Elementary School, which is an overcrowded elementary school, which after redistricting, the district lines for Rosa Parks never changed, and it's still listed as an overcrowded elementary school with a very low, I believe less than 10% free and reduced lunch. I wonder what the district's commitment is to help implement some economic balancing within schools. From my remembrance of the prior redistricting effort, poor schools seem to get poorer, and schools like Rosa Parks didn't change. In spite of the fact that we have 2 other elementary schools that are less than 2 miles away. And so I just wonder what the role of this body and what the intent and commitment is of the school board in redistricting to do things that are really in the best interest of the largest portion of children in the district, which are low income, free and reduced lunch children, versus perhaps what is going to be consistent with the preferences of parents.
Since you said school board, I'm gonna pass that over to Chair Spires. No, I'm just kidding with you. No, I mean, you bring an excellent point up, and redistricting is never a pleasant experience for anyone because someone is impacted. I would, when the question you asked about what's the role of this group, I think that's a great conversation starter for us to look at exactly what you just said, to make a recommendation to the board around those areas. Again, looking at pockets of high concentration, poverty as well as wealth. And we can't have a tale of two cities where schools are separate but equal. And so we've got to make sure they're not homogeneous in 2020, that they're diverse, and that they also reflect a cross-section of our community. What we don't want is what one of our neighbor school districts are experiencing down to the west of us, is a focus of resegregation as a result of their districting and busing plans. So this is research-based, that we need to create some evidence for why we're bringing this forward. You've given us some facts, because they are facts. I do know the data that you speak of. So I would suggest that this group start somewhere with a recommendation, start some exploratory analysis of what schools look like demographically, so that when we do go into redistricting, the team responsible for that can be ensure, put some strategies and activities in place to mitigate it. So that would be my recommendation to the board once we get to that place. And again, we'll have a new chair of this group starting January, and we'll need to make that a top priority.
And I think your timing is great, because we are going to have to redistrict again. Just to kind of give you all the history, the last redistricting actually happened even before I was on the board, and I'm about to be the most senior board member on the school board. So that tells you kind of the timeline. However, with that said, last year, the 1920 school year was the first year that it was fully implemented, that last change. And it really targeted the elementary schools. And I hear you reference that you are an overcrowded elementary school, but last year was the first year that none of the elementary schools were full, in the sense that they were all still able to allow in students. There used to be a thing at Rosa Parks and Ace and a couple of schools where if you didn't show up on June, whatever, that first day, you didn't get in those schools. And that is no longer an issue. So that is something that is working well with that redistricting, because I think that was really a target of that redistricting. There are problems with that redistricting plan. And that's another thing that we have talked about as we begin looking at this next one, which is really about middle schools. And there's two reasons. And we may even have to have two redistrictings. Winburn and Jesse Clark are extremely overcrowded at this time. And we also have a new middle school coming online, but we aren't sure our new middle school online will get online fast enough to even deal with this situation at Jesse Clark and Winburn. And we do have portables over there at this time, but that is definitely, so I think for this group to really look at that is important, because that is going to be something the new school board takes up next year, is they're going to have to look at redistricting, at least a maybe not opening up a full redistricting at this time, but definitely looking at those middle schools. And then also looking at some pockets, as we do recognize where you live matters in this community. I mean, we talk about, when we look at the CSI schools from a couple of years ago, there were 7 CSI schools, 6 of them touched geographically. And if you really know the history of Lexington, you would know that that 7th school actually has the students that were displaced when the Bluegrass Aspendale community was redone through the federal grants or whatever, and they displaced that community into where this other community is. So really the individuals living in that are still a part of this other community. They were just displaced. And so, we know that where you live matters. We also, know that students have different needs. We do have some schools that have some more diverse populations, and there are good things about it, and there are bad things about it. And we've realized that in the sense of, some schools feel that they can't meet some students' needs when they're trying to meet other students' basics needs, and such. I guess I see it's really interesting because I live right downtown. So all my kids go to like really merged schools. And sometimes we joke that if we could make every school look like the Ashlands and the LTMSs and some of our schools down here, that would be ideal. Because you do have, a lot of diversity. I mean, I remember a few years ago writing the grant for the Ashland playground and having to explain to the Kaboom, the funding organization, that one of the zip codes that pulled into Ashland was the highest zip code in the community and one was the poorest zip code in the community. And so it had our numbers really confusing because it was off. But what you really had to look at is how many students came from that 40508 area code into that school district and how this was their playground, and this really has become a community playground. So I think you raised some really great points, and I think the board will be really, like I said, we're getting 2 new board members and I don't know a lot about them, but I think the board as a whole would really be interested in, I think has a focus on equity. As we're moving this generation forward, moving this community forward, we realize that about 60% of our population, if not higher, is free and reduced lunch, and that and in poverty, and that at the same time that we're a majority minority district. One thing we have not talked about in here real fast, I do just want to jump on, is the feeding. And I want to say, I think that we are doing, and I really want to give the credit to our staff. Our staff is making sure our students are fed. And I know that there's been some concerns because we shut the buses situation down because that had so much exposure. But I know, for example, I go to the schools on Monday and Wednesday and pick up food for families that work and aren't able to get there during that time. And I see other teachers loading up their vans and taking to their students. I know we have schools are working with families if they don't have transportation or if they have a need that's not being met. In addition to food, the amount of amount of welfare visits, and I think I last heard we have 95% participation rate in NTI. That's really huge. That means the majority of our students we've made contact with and we're able to find and are engaged and participating. But even today, one of my children, their special ed teacher stopped by the house just to drop off on the front porch a packet of materials that she's going to be working with him on in his special ed segments. And so our teachers and our staffs are really going above and beyond to make sure students' needs are met. That Doug Adams and his team, I hate to say I have made several mental health referrals just based on this reality. Some of the emails that we've received have been really concerning. And so, I forward those on to him and the superintendent. And I know that those families are visited and are checked on, and services are provided for those families. There's all different services that are needed. And so, and our clinics are still open and serving families through this. And so I really just want to shout out to our staff because I think that is one area. And I think that's one area that's not publicized. And some people have this assumption, well, they're not feeding the students if they're not doing the bus bites, but that's not the case at all. We are feeding the students and more so. And I do want to reiterate too, the food on Monday and Wednesday is for all Fayette County students. It's not just for students, and it's not even just for students. It's for all Fayette County kids under the age of 18. And all you do is you pull up at any school and you say how many kids you have, and they load your car up with food. And it's a lot of food. And so, that's one thing I really just want to tout for a minute. So sorry to go off on that for a minute, but we hadn't talked about it. And I think that's important for this group to know. But yes, Nicole, to your original point, I hope that the next equity group next year will help us dive into this, because I think you raised some really important points.
Well, I just wanted to clarify one thing, is that even though Rosa Parks may not be currently overcrowded, the districting lines for Rosa Parks did not change. And we know that children grow up. So children that are in an elementary school when we did the redistricting most likely have moved on to middle school at this time. So that would have a direct effect on the overcrowdedness. The other thing that I think I would like the board to consider is where the gifted programs are housed. My daughter and son were in gifted programs and attended at Winburn and were bused there. And the biggest pushback that families and parents had around redistricting was having their children bused. But it's, as we know, when it's an opportunity for their children to do something like a gifted program, they're happy to put their children on a bus. But when getting on a bus to help rebalance school or do things that are in the best interest of all students in the school district, parents are less supportive. And the argument that eventually came down with regard to redistricting with Rosa Parks was that parents would move away. And given where we are in Fayette County, my question when I attended the meetings is, where are parents going to go? If you leave Fayette County, where exactly would they go to? I mean, there's not another adjacent county that has the quality of education that exists in Fayette County. So I just encourage the board to think about the historical arguments that have been made around middle class and upper middle class schools, and to put a process in place that holds people accountable, both parents as well as the school district, in having those reconsidered conversations.
So yeah, so I think two things real fast. What you said is exactly right. Like, Veterans Park is going to move into middle school, and then the middle school is going to be overcrowded. And that's why we're seeing kind of this middle school situation at the moment. But it's also, while it's been funny, like we've seen the numbers at ACE and Veterans Park decrease because apparently those people aren't moving. So they aren't having kindergartners anymore. We now have like 4th and 5th graders and 6th graders. So it's interesting to kind of track that data. But yes, you're exactly right. And we know that we have schools that are underpopulated in the downtown area and such as that. And so it's not just the gifted programs, but it has been also talked about, other programs and innovative programs that we can put into these facilities. And, we've talked about for years about possibly an arts program, the girls STEM program. And a lot of those are being housed down, in urban area, kind of in central. And, I think even the district, one of the moving forward with the joining of East Side and South Side downtown was to really have this amazing technical facility that will service kids in Fayette County, but also our tech schools serve all the surrounding counties as well. It's, right down the street from the Chamber of Commerce. It is right on that street where, I always kind of tease that Main Street is, the north side and the south side. But it is right there where everything comes together to really say that our community is behind technical education, and that this is, something that we want for everybody. And like you said, families will come if the right programs are there. So I want to just expand it, not just gifted. That is something that I think this board is looking at as we look at all the programs that we would like to see and be innovative with.
So sorry to capture the time, everyone, but I just want to clarify my comment about gifted education. I don't think that gifted programs should be housed in the schools where they are. I think it's important for students who attend a neighborhood school to know that the highest performing students in their school live in their neighborhood. I do not think it's good for low-income students to see the highest performing children be bused from across town. Yes. And I will just say, if it is my personal opinion, if a gifted program is going to live in some school, then either all students who are in the school should have access to those resources, or the program should be somewhere else. As a parent of 2 gifted children, I would have been perfectly fine if all the gifted students were put in some school, someplace, all by themselves. Because just personally looking into the eyes of neighborhood children and then them saying, well, why don't we get to do these things? Why aren't these people coming in to see us? And working with parents of gifted children who are perfectly comfortable denying opportunities to low-income students, when I know that my kid doesn't need it. My kid will be perfectly fine whether she, has those experiences or not. And I think that's the reality. And having been at middle-class schools, low-income schools, schools with gifted programs in Fayette County, the disparity that exists within those schools is, I'll just say, it is shameful. It is shameful. And it is hurting low-income students, which is the majority of the students in the district.
Mrs. Jenkins, I will say this, your comments are spot on. And they're spot on to the direction that will transform and transition this new equity council group. We know there's 6 members on this committee that will remain as a result of them being elected, and then a new 5 members coming on. And that's by design. We wanted the majority of the membership to be community-based members who would have the opportunity, once the transitions take place, to not empty out the complete board. And so I would recommend that we put your comments to paper now and begin drafting some exploratory evidence-based points that can support this argument as we move and advise the board in this area. And again, I commend you for bringing these issues forward because they're spot on.
I would also like to make a comment. I know we're running behind. Is it okay? Do I have the time to make a comment?
Go ahead.
So I'm a little confused about the role of the Equity Council because we haven't met since March. And I've had like dozens of people who had concerns and no way of communicating their concerns to anyone, which does not bode well for the image of transparency and accessibility in terms of equity. So how can we convey the parents' concerns that we receive in a real-time way? Do I forward emails to the board? Do I just compile a list of recommendations? Because I've had concerns from people who are Latinx. I've had concerns from people who are refugees. I've had concerns from people who are gifted and nowhere to transmit those concerns.
Well, I would say this, that the school system has continued to operate fully and openly, even with COVID-19. Our emails are continued to be open. Our phones or lines are continuing to be open. The school board meets twice a month. We have a planning meeting and a public meeting. And at those meetings,
These days.
and at those meetings, there's opportunities. The board members have email addresses. Many of them have phone numbers that are that some members of the community are able to access. So just out of clear transparency, I'm a bit puzzled that people say that they can't reach because we have language lines, we have family community engagement. I've hired multiple bilingual staff in my office for the purpose of creating just-in-time communication. You spoke about the Global X concern way back in March with ELs, particularly Guatemalans and Hondurans. And we had staff respond immediately from Lloyd Bourne's office in collaboration. So those pathways and networks are open and have remained open. In fact, you could have sent me an email. You could have sent Abdul Muhammad an email or a phone call. So again,
Mr. Thompson, I'm sorry, this is not directed towards the work you were doing, which I
no,
think
I'm just saying I'm trying to figure out why didn't somebody just send what your concerns.
We are community representatives and we have connections with people. They may feel more comfortable talking to us than to you. That's why we're there, right? To represent the people and to sort of filter things through. And I'm saying that there's been kind of a breakdown in the process of transmitting those opinions because not everybody wants to speak at a school board meeting as much as they are allowed to. They may have a one-on-one relationship with me or Nicole or Abdul or Talithia and want that concern relayed. And there's sort of a breakdown in the way that we can relay it. I mean, I guess I kept waiting for us to meet and we didn't. So probably there's that. And I honestly didn't know what to tell people when they're like, well, bring it up to the meeting, and we never met.
Yeah, I would say that the monthly meetings aren't the method for getting your concerns heard. This is an opportunity for this group to analyze and discuss issues that the district has been facing over a course of history of the district and current, and how can we put in strategies and structures to help the board and advise the board on those. So to think that the monthly meetings was the waiting place to discuss those, that may have been a breakdown on all of our part for communicating that or miscommunicating. But every single day you get a concern, you should send those concerns to the staff because we're the ones going to provide the service to those individuals. But when I say staff, you got a liaison here in me, and then we got school board members. If you listen in and tune into every one of the school board meetings, you will hear every single one of our board members talk about conversations they've had with constituencies out in the community and bringing those concerns forward because they're communicating with them. So I would advise that if you're getting those communications, to share them immediately with staff in the district. And if you'll look on that agenda, you'll see staff in the areas that we cite there that's responsible for many of the areas that you engage with. Again, the pipelines are and the pathways are open. Don't wait for a monthly meeting to share something that you can share with just in time at the moment.
All right, thanks for that.
So I just want to jump in. So I think this will help going forward, because I think I think Dominique raises some really great points. And so I will tell you, Dominique, that like as a board, what we do often is, we only have one employee, the superintendent. So I can't email Daryl and say, Daryl, I want you to go do this, because then he's like not going to do it, because I don't have that authority, and it's not how we work. But if I need something from Daryl, I might contact the superintendent and Daryl, so they're both on the same page, or ask the superintendent permission to but at the same time, if Tyler needs something, Tyler's in here, Tyler will probably typically copy myself and the superintendent so that I'm aware that this is going on. So I guess what I'm saying to you all is what I would probably recommend is, if you have a concern, copying the chair of this group and Daryl in your emails forward as soon as you have information. And like I said, I've had some emails and some concerns that I, needed mental health checks on people that same day. And so I, have contacted the superintendent and Doug Adams, and within an hour, those families are contacted. There's been issues that are very timely and are not able to wait. So I think that is a way. And then if you don't get a response, there's also someone else that's witnessed it, and it's okay to follow up and say, hey, please provide an update on this, or let me know what's going on. And I think if you're not getting those updates, and that is something definitely to bring back to these monthly meetings and raise concerns and say, if things are not, that communication is not there. But I think that is, if I were really going to recommend to this group the proper communication, it would be that when you have an issue, instead of going on a wild goose chase for you too, of who in the district handles this, because there's 7,000 employees. I don't want to go on that goose chase. So contacting Daryl and the board chair, if you want to loop myself or, and or all the board members in, you can feel free to do that as well. And get you should get a prompt response. And like Mr. Thompson said, all the board members' emails are public, our phone numbers are public, our addresses are public, and people have been showing up. But also, we created a email for all of us, which is just feedback@fayette.kyschools.us. And I created that because unfortunately we don't have, with virtual world, we can't have public comment. So that is a way that we've been allowing people to just hit all 5 of us at once. And the great thing about it versus public comment is sometimes public comment is limited to a minute or 2 or 3. And this is, you can write us as often as you want and as long as you want. And I know that we're all actively reading and trying to respond to all of them, in a very prompt time. And I think everybody has done a good job at that. So.
And I will add to that, Chair Spires, what I think is very important to note is that concerns do not equal school district-wide disparities or issues. What I would advise that if you've got a concern from a parent, particularly a single concern, that we begin to use the protocol of resolving that concern at the school level. Sometimes it gets out of order for a parent to reach out to a district employee at the district level and have not resolved the level in the classroom or with the school principal. So what we want to do is ensure that all of those protocols have been followed to mitigate some of the issues before they get to the district. Now, if the issues become multiple not just in a single school, but across multiple schools. That's where we as a district, as a committee, you all as a committee should begin analyzing the propensity of how often these things are happening to see if we've got a trend and a pattern. That's where we then look at policy and practice to say, okay, this is an issue across our district that we need to address. But we should be able to address those concerns at the school level through the service delivery models that we use. And again, we don't want every single parent reaching out to the district when we can solve those issues at the school level. If they elevate to the point of us having to engage them as a result of non-response, then that's a whole nother issue. But we certainly want the school leaders that we've hired to be able to manage and not necessarily control, but mitigate those issues at their schools.
I have a follow. I'm sorry. I just a quick follow-up question, Daryl, about that. I just want to clarify. You're not saying that parents don't have the right to come to the district with concerns.
Absolutely.
There's a preference.
Never said that.
There's a preference for them to go to their school, but parents are welcome to raise issues to whatever level they feel comfortable with in the district, right?
Absolutely. That never came out of my mouth.
I was just clarifying.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
One question I have, Chair Spires, is because I've heard you mention it a couple times now, is the students and where they are mentally. How are we, or are we tracking? Do we have the ability to track our students and knowing whether or not they are in need of some extra attention to deal with things from a mental standpoint?
Yes. I mean, I think that's again where I say the front lines have been phenomenal. Our teachers and our staff, all our staff did receive trauma training at the beginning of the semester as the approach for how to, trauma related to COVID and what to look for and whatnot. Doug Adams is really the expert on all this, and it might be good for him to come to maybe the January or whenever our next equity meeting is and kind of give an update to this group. I think it would be great to even hear how many mental health calls they've made, maybe even getting Debbie Bowen in as well and talking about what the nurses have been doing during this time, and how many visits and house calls and whatnot. So yes, I mean, that is something, but it really comes down to those front lines, those teachers who are working with those students every day and recognizing if a student has a need, and really reaching out to families and what, doing house calls and such. And there is a protocol in place for that as well. Daryl may want to add something else to it, but I think it would probably be, and Daryl, I'll defer to you and the next board chair or whoever. But I think that would be a great group to hear from about the mental health, because I think that is a concern through all this. We do know this is very traumatic for our students, and we know that this is very, this is not typical times, and our kids miss their friends, and our kids, I have a daughter that has been begging to go anywhere for days, and she tried to convince her dad to take her to the Target the other day, and he was ready to do it until I said, oh, no. Even Target has a sign that says like 1 adult per household, like not really a thing. And so, we know our kids want to see their friends. They want to get out. They miss their activities. And it does have a mental health toll on it. They're over the Zooms. They're over, I think as it gets winter and they're inside more, it's only going to continue to add. And then, we have this other piece too that we really need to talk about. We have families that are in financial hardships that have never been in financial hardships or never imagined. We have families that historically have, given to the food pantries who are now in line at the food pantries. And it's a very difficult for these families to navigate and to, and that has put some extra stress on our children as well. And so, really recognizing that. And that's why I said the feeding programs and such are so awesome. And part of it is because they go to, they're non-discriminatory. So anybody can come get food and no one's going to judge you one way or the other. you know, and as part of that, when I pick up food for the other families, I pick up food for my kids. And that's to kind of break down that barrier that anyone can get this food. And my kids, I will be honest, love it, because it's so funny how, we always talk about like the rectangle pizza and the corn and the great memories it brings us of school when we were kids. Well, our kids have these same memories. And so like they'll get the sausage biscuit or the hamburger that, we may not think looks great or appetizing, no matter how great our food people are. And my kids just will devour it. And they're like, oh, like the other day there was a breadstick. My daughter was like, oh, I've been missing these breadsticks. And I'm like, really? Like from the cafeteria? She's like, yeah. So that's the way. Yeah.
One last question. I know it's late, but something else just popped in my head. So I know there's a moratorium on evictions right now, but I believe that's supposed to come due this month. Has the school system thought about anything regarding what if that does not get extended? I know there's a request going to the mayor here real soon to ask to extend that out possibly till May of next year. Has the school district looked at and kind of thought about what if that does not happen? And we could have a lot of those parents that you just talked about that was donating food now become homeless.
And I would say yes to that, Abdul. And partly that's a question where collaboration and partnerships is key. Now, we do not provide housing as a school district. We provide teaching and learning. And so that's part of the work, is that we are highly in tune to the needs of our families and students. And Doug's office, Student Support Services, through our Friskies, have a pretty good pulse of the economic state of most of our families. However, that's where public policy comes in. I'm a part of the Public Policy Committee with the Chamber of Commerce. I'm also part of several other partnership groups to talk about this every single week. We talk about the moratoriums. We talk about who, what, and where, and who's responsible for supporting the changes in the law, the courts, and what those impacts are. We talk about where those loans have gone to under the COVID-19 guidance that's been provided from the federal government. But again, we also provide social and emotional supports through our mental health providers. As you all know, we did a comprehensive 10-point safety plan a couple of years ago that hired 45 to 50 mental health counselors that did not exist in our schools. We also increased counselors to lower the ratio below the state and national average. Those are the intentionalities that we've been able to do to help support families get through some of these mental health crises. And again, this is an issue not just students are facing. We also dealing with our employees who are having fatigue as a result of having to increase their caseloads during this period. So this is not normal, and for us to operate almost as if this is doing business as normal, we've got to figure out how do we come out of this in a different way than we have coming in. And so if we face another situation like this, how can we mitigate it on the front end? And so I would say, yes, we are having those conversations, because I'm in them most weeks with the public, the public policy members of our community. And Craig Kamick may want to jump in as it relates to social services from what the city's dealing with. I've been on some calls with some judges who see those evictions on their docket and how they've tried to push legislation back to Frankfurt to ensure that those moratoriums are expanded as we continue to get high rates of concentration. So it's a juggling act that businesses are in business to make money, and oftentimes it requires tenants to pay their rent for those businesses to operate. And so we're again keeping our eye and ear to the ground to try to listen to the needs of families.
Okay, thank you. I know it's late. Anyone have any last minute questions, comments, concerns? So some of us are rolling off this, and I will be one of them because I was appointed by Daryl Love, and so his replacement will obviously appoint someone that will fill this seat. And for those who are rolling off again, my intentions are to get involved more heavily in one of the committees. This time has really highlighted, for me, the need to really get specific on an idea that you really want to focus on. It's so much that we're all passionate about, and we all have things that we are passionate about. That's human nature. But whatever that is, then I would encourage you to get streamlined, focused on that particular topic, and see if you can really help move the needle. For me, that is financial literacy. And so whatever I can do to be a part of a committee that will help push the narrative there, then that's what my intentions are. And I hope each one of you all do the same.
So Chair Muhammad, let me thank you for your time and service, as well as the other 4 members that are appointed by the board members. Given the fact that we have a quorum of the body here, one of the things that we may want to do, given the first Tuesday falls right around that first week or so after the new year, is go ahead and set a meeting date for January through your action, which will then allow the board members to appoint their 5 members to join these other 6 on that meeting date. And in between this time, we can then get notice out to them about what that meeting date is going to be. So before you all leave tonight, if that would be something you could do, is take a look at your calendars to make a motion to set the next Equity Council meeting date in January, given the quorum we have here, so that that group can then convene for their first meeting.
Is there a date that you had in mind?
So we have right now, tentatively, our schools are scheduled to return back to in-person, depending on the science and the contraction rates, on January the 7th, which is a Thursday. Is that correct, Ms. Spires, right?
I want to clarify, because that is the date kind of being tossed around, but it's not been voted on officially anywhere. And I actually just answered that question in a group earlier today. So I am telling people we are targeting the week of January 4th, and it won't necessarily be January 4th.
So let's look at January the Tuesday, January the 12th.
Well, maybe.
If that's amenable to you all. And based on the circumstances of time, that could or may be virtual or in person, but I'll certainly send you a notice just within a week or 2 of that.
So I'll entertain a motion to schedule the first meeting for the Equity Council in January of 2021. Preferably by somebody that will definitely be part of the council.
So I move that we schedule our first meeting of January of 2021 for January 12th at 6:30.
It's been moved by Dr. Jenkins, and is there a second?
Second.
And it's been second by Talithia. Talithia, are you a doctor as well?
No, I'm a lawyer.
Okay, I'm about to make you a doctor, girl. I just look.
I mean,
No.
technically, I have a Juris Doctor degree, but
See, there you go. Just I gotta be proper. You all earned it, So, hey,
I would not trust me with medical device at all.
All right. So it's been properly first and second there. Any questions, concerns? All in favor, aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstain? Motion passes. Thank you. January 12th, 2021 will be the first meeting of the 2021 calendar year of the Equity Council.
Chair
Mr.
Mohammed,
Yes, sir.
I will be rolling off. And I just wanted to say thank you to everyone. I think I'm the senior member of the council right now. I've been on for 5 or 6 years. I don't remember. But I wanted to thank Chair Spires for appointing me, and thank everyone else. It's not been the easiest 5 years. I will admit to that. But it's been a good learning experience for myself, and I look forward to continuing my connection with you all. I am the school's liaison for the mayor's office, so I will be involved.
They're gonna wear you out, man.
Yeah.
No, thank you for your service, though. It definitely been an honor, pleasure working with you. Who else? Anyone else like to say anything that's rolling off?
I don't know if I'm rolling off or not, but I've been wanting to say just real quick all night. I put it in the chat, but the work that I've been doing with the University of Kentucky College of Education aligns very much with what was said. So I won't, summarize it all, be quick or whatnot. But any way that either I can help, facilitate one of your goals, as part of the council or otherwise, I would love to do that. And any way that maybe there's opportunities for me to learn from the constituents that are being served by the district, that would be excellent too.
Mr. Berry, I do appreciate that, because we are partnered with the University of Kentucky College of Education, Dr. Julian, and a whole lot of other parts of the university around diversity initiatives. The next generation, Dr. Lou Young, and part of the work in my office is ensuring that those pathways and pipelines have culturally, as you saw in the recommendation, linguistic components to how our teachers are badged and licensed and certified in what they do, so that when they enter our urban classrooms, we don't have to reinvent them through our new teacher induction program. So I'd certainly like to get you connected to some of our working groups so that you can add your insight to the group.
No, right. I was going to send you an email in the coming days. I was just hoping that it wasn't too long. But yeah, I have plenty. Yeah, I look forward to that.
That's perfect.
All right. Anyone else? All right.
Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. I'm glad we are able to get back to this. We'll hopefully get back to a rhythm where we're meeting more often than how long has it been? 7 months. This is not normal. So again, we can't, I guess, cavalierly say, okay, what we could have done or should have done, we ought to have done, because we didn't know it was going to be like this. And so not having a crystal ball has put us here. But what we have done is learn from our past so that we don't reinvent it or redo it again. And so knowing that, I wish you all happy holidays. For those who celebrate, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And certainly stay healthy at home and at work for many of you who continue to have to go into the office at some interval and intermittent time. But take care of yourselves. And if anything else, I need you all to pray for our superintendent. If that's what you do, whatever you do to reach out to whatever source of your strength, ask that source of your strength to help return our superintendent to his greatest health, to support the great work he continued to do. And so from me to you all, God has compelled me to tell you that I love you as a brother, as a Christian. I will reach out and do anything I can do to support you. Separate me as an employee, because I have a role and responsibility here, but as a human being, I have a compelling commitment to ensure that my brothers and sisters are taken care of. So please don't hesitate to reach out to Daryl Thompson, the human, for anything that you need. And that's who I am, and that's what I represent. So to you all, God be the glory.
Amen. Thank you. And
Thank you.
may God bless our superintendent for a quick recovery. All right, everybody. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I so moved.
So moved. And I heard a second. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. It's great to see you all as well.
Hope everyone has a safe holiday season.
Thanks. You too.